you've clicked on this video, chances are that you already have an old analog camera but don't really know how to use this thing, or you plan on buying one but don't really know where to start. And by the end of this video, you will be ready to shoot your first roll of film and know everything that is important for analog photography. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Hello my friends and welcome to this video today. So let's not waste any time and let's go straight to the point with part number one. So there are a ton of different analog cameras out there that you might have or you might want to buy. This video is best suited for people who want to start with 35mm photography. That is the most common type of film stock, and I would definitely recommend going with that in the beginning because it's just most widely available and it is the easiest to shoot. And basically there are three types of different 35mm film cameras. First up, we have these things here. This is an SLR camera. I feel like the most common type of analog camera for a good reason. It has a mirror inside it, so the light gets reflected into your viewfinder, which is this thing here. And you can exactly see what you shoot and you can exactly see where your focus lies, which is very, very important. You also got a so-called interchangeable lens system with it, which means that you can change lenses. You can just detach the lens that is on the camera and throw another one on, for example, for getting another zoom range, more zoom range, less zoom range, maybe different aperture so you get more blurry backgrounds, stuff like that, which is very handy, and I would definitely recommend go with one of these in the beginning. However, you need to make sure that a lens comes with this thing, because when you buy, for example, one off eBay, there might be the possibility that you just get the body, but make sure you get a kit with a lens as well, and then you can later upgrade to other lenses if you want to. The second type of camera is a so-called rangefinder camera. They look like this or somewhat like this, and as you can see, they are really compact. You can just throw them in your backpack or your pocket, which is very good. However, they are not as easy to operate. I feel like most of them are quite old and you only can see what you take a picture of with this small, very small rangefinder that you can see here. It's not as precise as an SLR. Again, I love these cameras as well, but when you really start out and never had an analog camera before, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going with one of these, but this is just my opinion here. Also, most of them have a built-in lens, so you really cannot change, for example, the zoom. You're fixed with one focal length. The third kind of 35mm analog camera is somewhat like this. These ones are a little bit more modern. They are basically point and shoot cameras, so you don't need to set anything up. You just throw film inside there and the camera will make the settings for you, which is obviously the most easy way to shoot, and I don't blame anyone who uses these things. I really like them as well sometimes, otherwise I wouldn't have one here. But I feel like if you found a camera in your grandparents' basement, for example, or you want to get into photography and really learn how to shoot, then this might not be the perfect choice. So in this video, I will talk about the SLRs most of the time. However, everything I said can be applied to the other cameras as well. Okay, part two, and here I want to quickly explain where you can buy these cameras. If you already have one, you can skip this part. I put timestamps here so you can skip to the parts that are important to you. So basically there are two options. The first one is you get one online, for example, off eBay, which I tend to do most of the time. You have some risk with it because sometimes these cameras are not functional, although they don't have a lot of electronics built in. The shutter can fail or you can get fungus, for example, in the lenses. So you have to keep an eye out for that. If you want to be on the safe side, you can always go with a camera dealership, for example, where they will sell you cameras that they check beforehand on their functionality. Again, that will give you an extra layer of safety there. However, I've never done it before and I've never had a bad experience, but I heard bad stories. So this is something that you have to decide for yourself. Let's get to part number three now, the most important part of this video, because now I will explain you exactly how to set up your camera and what the different dials and buttons does on your device. Again, there are a ton of different cameras out there, and the layout might change a little bit. However, most of these things, they are pretty common and you will find them on basically every analog SLR camera from the 60s to the 90s basically. When you look at the camera, the first thing that you can see here is this dial, which says basically 1500, 250, all the way up to 4S, and this stands for seconds. 4S stands for 4 seconds and 1000 stands for 1000th of a second of exposure time. So how long the shutter of your camera will be open and light will shine on your film stock behind it. Obviously, the slower the shutter speed is, the less light gets on your camera. So when you're outside, for example, you most likely want to choose something like 1:250, 1:500, but this depends, more on that in a second. One thing that I want to say here is that I would not suggest going below 1/60th of a second. So 1/30th or 1/15th of the second. Some people can shoot handheld with this long of exposures, but most people, they will move a little bit. And if you move, the picture will be blurry in the end. So yeah, 1/60th is the maximum that I do. Otherwise, you will need a tripod or something where you can place your camera on so it stands still during the exposure. The next thing is the aperture. And the aperture is most of the time set on the lens with these analog cameras. So you have a ring, which basically says, in this case, 2.8, 4, 5.6, and so on and so on. And the lower this number is, the wider open is the aperture. So basically a ring in your camera that controls how much light comes into your camera. But not just that, it will also change your depth of field. So the lower this number is, the less of your photo will be in focus, which sometimes can come in really handy. For example, when you shoot a portrait where you want to have a very, very blurred out background, then you want to use a wider aperture. But if you have a picture with different layers to it, so for example, a person standing in the foreground, a tree in the midground, and a mountain in the background, and you want to have everything in focus, you most likely want to close up this aperture a little bit so that everything is in focus. Then you can see this button here. This is the shutter button. It explains itself basically. You press this button and the photo will be taken. And next to it, you have this lever, this handle basically. And this is very important because after every shot you took, you will need to push this lever so the film advances in the body of the camera and you can shoot the next picture on the next piece of your film roll. On the other side here, you can see another dial basically, but this thing is important for loading up your camera and open it up. Really important here, if you put a film inside the camera and you start shooting, you cannot open this up because it will destroy your film. You first need to rewind all the film roll. I will tell you about that in a second, but this is just a side note here and really, really important. So you can see, you can flip this thing up. Then you have the small handle here again. And if you pull it up, then you will release the back and it opens up and you can load your film inside the camera. To do that, you will need to put your film roll inside like that. And then you will need to pull this little latch so a little bit of the film releases, and then you pull it over to the other side, and on the other side you have this coil with this small latches inside, and then you can basically put the film in one of these latches and just release the shutter once. After that you will be able to use the lever that advances the film in the cage. I told you about that a second ago. And you will do this 1 or 2 times until the film is secured. And when you feel like it is secured, then you can close up the back again. And as I said, never open it again until you shot all of your film and you are ready to rewind all the film. Then you can go on shooting. Different cameras have different ways of showing you how much film you have left. For example, you can see this little dial. It will show you 1 to 36. So 36 is the maximum that a film roll usually has. And if you're ready with shooting, you will need to turn your camera around and press this little button here. Again, nearly all SLR cameras that I've ever used have one of these buttons, and it is the film release button. So this will enable you again to pull the film back into its housing. You do this by, again, using this little lever on the upper left corner. I showed you that a second ago for releasing the back of your camera so you can put a new film in. And there is a little arrow on this thing. And in the direction this arrow points, you will twist this coil and you will twist it as long as you can. Basically, as long as you have resistance, there is still film to wind up again. So if you feel no resistance anymore, this is your sign that the film is fully enclosed in its housing again. And then you can pull it up to release the back again and you can take your film out. And that's basically it. These are the most important settings on your camera. So before I tell you about how to use this camera on location, I just want to talk about film stocks here because there is a ton of options out there and it can be very overwhelming really fast. So in the beginning, when you don't know what colors you like in certain film stocks, I would suggest, if you want to shoot in color, go with Kodak Gold. It is a standard choice, not that expensive, widely available. It has great, warm, retro looking colors, what most people want, and you can experiment later on with different film stocks, but this is what I personally would suggest. When you want to go black and white, there are 2 options that I can recommend you. First up, we have the Ilford HB5, and then we have the Agfa or AGFA APX. And both of them, again, widely available, pretty cheap, and just great black and white stocks. So these would be my recommendations here if you don't know what to choose in the beginning. So I already told you how to load up your film roll into your camera. But one thing that is really important is to know which ISO your film stock has. There are different options, and the lower the ISO, the lower the light sensitivity will be. And you will address for that with your different settings I just talked about, for example, the aperture or the shutter speed. When you want to shoot in really bright situations, I would suggest going with an ISO 100 or 200 film. And if you want to shoot in low light situations, go with an ISO 800 film. But when you don't really know what you want to shoot, I would suggest go with ISO 200 or 400. In order to do a correct exposure, you need to tell your camera the ISO value of your film. And you do this by twisting this little dial here. Again, it will look a little bit different on different camera models, but you will find it will basically again say 100, 200, 300, 400 and so on and so on. But one secret tip I can give you here is that it's always wise to choose a little bit higher of a value than your film stock actually has as an ISO. So in this case, it would be a Kodak Gold 200 film, but I will set it to 300. I do this because it's always a good idea to overexpose your images a little bit with analog photos. This is basically the total opposite to digital photography, but in analog photography, having a little bit brighter highlights is not a big problem. But when your darks burn out, so you don't have any information in your dark parts of the image, then yeah, it's really hard to recover that. So a little bit of overexposing is always a good idea. And then it's time to head out and shoot this thing. To get the correct exposure values that you will set on your camera, you have different options for that. The first option is the built-in light meter of your camera. Most cameras from the 70s up to the 80s, 90s, they have these light meters built in. However, they are not always super reliable, especially with older cameras. So you might want to try it out, but don't rely on that totally. If you use the built-in light meter, you will have some kind of display or some kind of scale in your viewfinder, which tells you the values that you need to choose. For example, when you want to do a wide open aperture shot here, then I would set obviously the aperture to 2.8 on my lens. Then the camera gives me the value for the correct shutter speed and vice versa. Some cameras, they have automatic modes. Again, they are not super reliable with these old cameras. This is just something that you have to try out with your specific camera. Another option, and this is honestly a great way to get the correct exposure, is just use your phone. There are a ton of free apps out there. They are called Light Meter or some variation of that name. And what they will do for you is when you have your phone with you, which most likely you have most of the time, then you can just take a picture with your phone or open the app, scan the light situation, and the phone will tell you the correct values for your settings. And this is honestly pretty cool and pretty easy. You can also, and this is the third option, buy a distinct light meter. So a small device which will give you the values. And this is something that is great to have, but when you just start out, you don't really need it. I don't have one either. So yeah, I would not recommend that if you just want to try it out, because it's additional cost that you just can skip. The last thing that you need to do is focus. There are analog cameras with autofocus systems, obviously, but most of them, especially when they are older, don't have this built in. So you will have to focus manually. For that, you have this ring on your lens again. This ring also has different numbers on that, and it always ends in infinity. When you turn this ring to infinity, everything in the distance will be in focus. And if you twist it towards the other side, then you will change the focal plane and will come nearer and nearer to you. I cannot tell you how to focus in this video. You just have to get a feeling for it. However, it's not too difficult. And again, with an SLR, you can look through the viewfinder. There are different ways it will display the focus point in the picture to you through the viewfinder. There are different mechanisms, but again, it's not too hard. You just have to get used to it. And if you have a specific camera model and want to know maybe more information about that, please let me know that in the comments below. I'm really happy to help you there. I don't have all analog cameras, obviously, but I have a lot of these laying around here in my apartment. So yeah, just ask, maybe I can help you. The last thing I want to talk about in this video is the development of your film. And you can do that at home. It's not too difficult, but honestly, if you just want to start out, bring your film rolls to a photo lab. They will develop the film for you, and you just have a lot less to take care of and think about, and it's just way easier. With that said, we come to the end of this video now. I hope this helped you at least a little bit. If you have questions, let me know them in the comments below. I have a ton of other photography related videos over on my channel as well. So if you want to, feel free to check them out. That would be amazing. What would also be amazing if you could leave a like, maybe even a comment, or even a subscription That would be so awesome. But for now, I just say thank you for watching this video today, and I wish you a great week. I wish you a great day, and I hope I see you in next week's video. So see you then, and goodbye.